demonstrate how to add a grid in our PowerForm that retrieves its data from a web service call. In our scenario, I have created a list called Supervisors with a Department Choice column. This list is supposed to contain the names of my organization's department managers. Let's assume that we need to enrich our form with a list of employees of the selected department, which derives from an external web service. This service is hosted on an ASMX file in my IIS web server and exposes a web method named getEmployees. As shown in the service description, it takes one string parameter for specifying the user's department. The method returns an array of person objects with name, age, and department attributes. So, now that our web service is online and accessible, let's register PowerForms for my supervisors list and see how I can set our form to interact with my web service with a few clicks. When I open the PowerForm for the first time, the default customization appears. As you can see, it contains the title and department fields. Let's press Design in order to open the designer and further customize the form. The designer area appears with the controls placed in their default position. What we are going to do first is to toggle the web service section and add a definition for the web service that we need to call by clicking New and setting a desired name for our web service. Now we must specify the URL of the ASMX file that contains our getEmployees web method. If my web service required network authentication, we would have to define a set of credentials by pressing the Manage button next to the Stored Credentials field and specify a username, password, and domain to be used upon generating the service call. The same holds for any extra HTTP headers your web service may require. Now, the quickest way to configure our web method call is to copy the SOAP XML request from the IIS service page and paste it to the corresponding field in the designer, enabling the Set Web Service XML option. In the XML, we should then find the department's parameter value and replace it with the value we need to pass. Since our department will be dynamically specified by a control in our form, we'll use the curly bracket expression with the control's name that will be replaced during runtime by the C department combo box value. Once we have our SOAP XML ready, we can press the Test button in order to ensure that we get a valid XML response. When we close the pop-up, PowerForms parse the SOAP response and suggests a valid XPath query that will be used to parse the results. In our case, we need our records to loop through the person entities. That's why I will set the XPath to return all the elements with name equal to person. Now we must define the fields to retrieve. These are returned as child XML elements in the SOAP response. If we need different display names for grid header titles, we should also define the headers attribute. Both headers and attributes are defined in semicolon separated format. After we finish our configuration, we should press Execute to ensure that the results are parsed properly. Now we are ready to go back to the designer and add the user interface elements to present the web service results. We'll first add a section in our design area. Let's specify a title and a border. Then open the toolbox and drag a data grid inside the newly created section. Let's name it C Employees. As you can see, we can configure the data grid to retrieve its value from any external source, such as a predefined SharePoint list query, SQL result set, or in our case, a web service call. Our control is now configured to retrieve values from our getEmployees web method. For better display, we can optionally allow groupings in our data grid to demonstrate the out-of-the-box drag-and-drop grouping functionality. That's it. If we save our new design and go back and refresh our PowerForm, we can see that the grid on the bottom of the form contains the employees' rows. These results are reloaded whenever a different department is selected. Since I have enabled grouping, we can also group our grid lines per department or whichever field we want. Thank you for watching.